Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandra Broadwell and welcome to my Gin and Tonic vlog. I've got my Gin and Tonic right here, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about 5 books with genies in them that I've read over the last 2 months. I got really lucky in that I really, for the most part, enjoyed all of these books, so I'm really excited to talk to you about them. I recorded bits and pieces of me talking about them as I was reading them, and I've spliced them together along with some beautiful scenery and some things that we've done along the way. My husband and I are full-time van lifers, so you'll get a little bits and pieces of all the places that we've been over the last 2 months, from Maine all the way to Colorado. The 5 books that I read for this vlog are Alif the Unseen by G. Willow Wilson, The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wicker, A Master of Djinn by P. Jolly Clark, The City of Brass by S. A. Chakraborty, and The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. So I have those in this order. I'll be sure to timestamp them down below so you can skip around to the books that you're most interested in. And now, your wish is granted, we're diving into the video. So I am now about at the halfway point of Alif the Unseen, and I'm having a really good time so far. So this book basically is about this young man named Alif who is a computer programmer slash hacker, and he lives in the Arab Spring at a time when there is lots of government oppression of free-thinking ideas or anything that is counter to their government mandates. And so there's heavy internet surveillance and computer surveillance to make sure that dissidents aren't spreading harmful ideas. And so his job, the way that he makes money, is by providing encryption and protection for people in his home country to be able to share their ideas freely. Very early on in the story, we learn that there is a larger government crackdown, kind of a counter-terrorism, counter-hacking new thing that the government is implementing, and it's super effective. And pretty quickly after the book starts, Alif's programs get broken into and the government finds out about him and his clients, and he goes on the run to try and hide. The state is after him, and he knows that if he gets thrown into a state prison, that he will likely be tortured and killed. Very high stakes. There's also romance involved that gets very tangled and messy, and a kind of forbidden ancient book comes into it, and he's clueless as to how to go into hiding, and he seeks out the help of someone at a market that he heard might be able to assist him, a guy named Vikram the vampire, who turns out in fact to be a djinn. So that's where the djinn comes into it. Everything kind of spirals from there. So it's been really good so far. It's kind of got a little undercurrent of like that thrillery aspect that just keeps you hooked in and wanting to know what's going to happen next. And so I'm having a really good time, and I will update you guys probably when I'm finished with the book. I finished my first book for the Gin and Tonic vlog, Alif the Unseen by G. Willow Wilson. I really had a good time with this. I think the protagonist was pretty annoying, not in a super off-putting way, but just in a way that kind of irked me as I was reading it. I think he was a little unself-aware in the way that he treated women that wasn't fully addressed in this book. But that was really my only complaint. This book was really thrilling. It had kind of a fast pace. Some things happened that I didn't expect to happen, which was really exciting. And it turned out to be much more thrilling and adventurous than I expected for a book that was about a hacker. I think this had some really great commentary. It definitely definitely had a different perspective and setting from a lot of the fantasy books that I normally read, since it was set in the Arab Spring and was entirely based around Muslim characters. So I really appreciated all of that. G. Willow Wilson is apparently the co-creator of the Miss Marvel comics. So that was really cool to read a novel by someone so well known for such a famous Muslim character. A good portion of the latter half of this book actually takes place in some kind of other realm, in terms of it's a world that the Jinn inhabit that is not safe for people. And so it had the same sort of vibe as like when a character goes into the Fae, or, you know, that sort of like Diagon Alley type feeling of otherworldly place. So really liked just all the vibes that this book was putting off. I thought the plot was really well paced and exciting, and the Jinn in it I felt like were very accurately portrayed as to how, staying true to the original Jinn myth, and they're not just like genie in a bottle type characters, although there was different types of Jinn portrayed. So it was pretty diverse in that representation, and they weren't all good or evil, but just had a variety of different ways that they were portrayed. Yeah, I had a really good experience reading this, and it's always fun to find a book that you've never heard anyone else talk about or recommend, and it turned out to be such a hit. So really happy with this. The next book that I'm going to pick up for the Gin and Tonic vlog, I've already checked out from the library, and that is going to be The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wicker. So I will let you guys know after I start reading that. Hey y'all, I'm filming this clip from Acadia National Park up in Maine, and right now I'm about 42% of the way through The Golem and the Jinni. This is my Kindle in case you can't tell. I'm really liking it so far. It feels very fairy tale-esque. And so far, the Golem is a woman. She's made of clay. She was brought to life as her master was bringing her across the ocean to America. And this is all like pretty much in chapter 1, and he dies like right after he brings her to life. And apparently golems, their whole purpose in life is to serve their master, and so she is kind of purposeless. She's adrift. She gets to the New World, New York, and is just trying to figure out how to be. The genie, on the other hand, was trapped in a bottle and released in the New World. He's been trapped for like 1,000 years, and he's just figuring all of this out after he comes out. He doesn't remember who trapped him, how he got trapped, and he's like really shocked that it's been so long. There's also other point of view characters that we see from some people that they meet, the person who created the golem. There's like lots of different things going on. I'm interested to see how it's all going to tie together. There's even like the perspective of an ice cream maker who like lives in the same neighborhood as the genie is living in now. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm interested to see where it goes. But yeah, it definitely has that sort of fairy tale sort of vibe where things can be really dark but like whimsical at the same time. So that's where I'm at with this one. So yesterday I finished The Golem and the Jinni, and it was not the romance tale that I expected. It really wasn't a romance. It was a story about two impossible beings who find themselves in New York City, and them trying to survive and finding solace in each other and their relationship, because they both try to hide who they are, and when they recognize the otherness in each other, they really bond over that. And there's larger plots here at stake. There's people that are kind of after them. There was like a lot more point of views than I expected, but I really enjoyed it. It's a duology, so I'm interested to pick up the next book and see how that one goes. So yesterday I started A Master of Djinn by P. Jolly Clark, and I was really excited to start this one because I read Ring Shout by P. Jolly Clark earlier this year, and it is in my top favorite books of the year so far. So I was just really excited to try something else by this author. I got about 25% of the way through the book yesterday, and I am really enjoying all the world building and the characters. That was one of the things that stood out to me about Ring Shout as well, was that the characters were super vibrant, and so was the world. So this author really just has like a special skill for that I really love. But basically, A Master of Djinn is set in the early 1900s, and it is like a steampunk Cairo setting with magic. So that's pretty great. I've always loved like a steampunk aesthetic. Obviously, I love Djinn. That's why I'm doing this vlog. So the premise basically is our main character is a woman that works, she's an agent basically for like the Ministry of Magic, and not in the Harry Potter sense like she is a magic user, but she's like the part of the government that deals with magical things that happen. And so she like is a liaison with Djinn and other magical entities, and investigates basically when like things go wrong. So it starts off, she's assigned to this case where these cultists were all murdered mysteriously. It seems like magic was involved, and it's all tied up with this guy that recently showed up in Cairo, and he's calling himself the Master of Djinn, who's this like famed historical figure that disappeared a long time ago and no one has heard from since. Of course, she doesn't believe that he's really who he says he is. She thinks he's just some dude that's like cashing in on the fame of this historical figure and building a following, and they don't know really what he wants, but they think he might be tied in with this murder of all these cultists that just happened. So that's kind of what's going on. It's sapphic, it's steampunk, it's got a little bit of like cop investigator vibe. She's not a cop, but she's like a federal agent basically. So generally not my favorite type of storyline, but I'm really enjoying, like I said, all the characters and world buildings, and just kind of like the noir feel that it has. So I'm excited to see where the next 75% of the book are going to go. So I'm back because I realized as I was putting this video together, I never filmed a wrap-up for A Master of Djinn by P. Jolly Clark. I just wanted to say I really had a good time with this book. I think of the 5 that I read, this one had the most diversity of Djinn and mythology included in it. It also included some Egyptology with some Egyptian gods that obviously were not featured in any of the other books that I read for part of this vlog. And I think P. Jolly Clark just really has a knack for writing like a crescendo up to an action sequence at the end of his stories that I really enjoy. Like I said in the first part, detective stories aren't usually my favorite, and I feel like if the main character had been someone else involved in the story, I probably would have enjoyed it more, but I really did like the dynamic between the main character and her partner, as well as the main character and her romantic partner. And overall, I think this was a super duper solid book. I will probably eventually also get around to reading the short stories that go in this world as well, just because it was such a good time. The world was super cool, and I'd love to get more into it. Okay, so I know I haven't recorded since I started City of Brass, but I am currently 49% of the way through the ebook, and I have a theory. Anyway, I'm loving City of Brass. It's one of those books that I am thinking about even when I'm not reading it. And I'm thinking about the characters and their interactions. There's so much depth to this world, and there's a great mix of like thrilling components and action mixed in with political intrigue and culture wars and things like that. It's got a little bit of everything, and I'm really, really digging it so far. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but really enjoying City of Brass at the halfway point. So yesterday I finished City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and it is definitely in my top 5 books of the year so far. I'm totally enraptured in these characters and the story and where it's going. There are layers and layers of complexity in the political system, the magic system. There's so many mysteries yet to be solved, and I cannot wait to get to the second book in the series. Unfortunately, in order to finish this vlog, I have to read one other book first. So next up is going to be the Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, but I'm going to hurry and rush through that one so that I can finish the Daevabad series. Super, super good. I have mostly just excitement and not too many thoughts about it, so hopefully in a later review I can give more coherent thoughts. So I'm going to try again giving more coherent thoughts on the first book in the Daevabad trilogy. In that one, our main character is a woman who is basically a charlatan. She likes to swindle rich people out of their money by giving like false fortunes and performing like religious rites for people whose religion she is not a part of. But she also does have some unexplained healing powers, which she's never examined very closely. And so she does occasionally provide real value to the people that she says she's helping. But for the most part, it seems like she's kind of a swindler. And so she's pretending to do this healing ritual for this family who has a daughter who has something wrong with her. And when she does, she like says some mumbo jumbo words and she accidentally summons a Jinn, which she did not believe in. And the Jinn is super pissed and he kidnaps her, and they are chased across the desert by these evil like Ifrit ghoul type beings. He sweeps her away to the city of the Jinn, and when he does, she learns that she might actually have some Jinn blood in her after all, and maybe that's where her healing powers came from. She gets wrapped up in a lot of the politics in the city of the Jinn once they get there, and everything is not what it seems. There is lots of racism in the city between the different types of Jinn towards each other and kind of the half-bloods. It's very complex and layered, and it left so much on the table for books 2 and 3, and I can't wait to see how it develops as the story moves along in the second and third book. It was 100% a 5-star book. I have heard that the second and third book get even better, and I can't wait. There were parts of it that had me feeling lots of feels, and like not just like giddy feelings, but also just like anger and disgust and revulsion. Like I was really immersed in what these characters were going through, and they became endeared to me as the story went on. So I can't wait to see what happens to these characters in the next 2 books. So I am 50% of the way through The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and I'm having a really good time. The magic in this one is so fun. This is the book that most closely follows the stories from 1001 Nights, in that one of the main characters is the son of the Sultan from that story. So in The Stardust Thief, the Jinn are a hunted species. They're considered evil by the Sultan, and so there are hunters whose primary mission in life is just to hunt down and kill any Jinn they can find. Jinn blood is known to have healing properties, and anywhere that Jinn blood is spilled in the desert, oases and beautiful plants and flowers pop up. And Jinn also can enchant what they call relics, which are basically like magical items. And so there's some really cool magical items that are included in this story, and some like shadow magic that I find really interesting. So I'm just really enjoying like all the magical elements of the Jinn. Like the other stories that I've read, Jinn are beings of fire, they don't like iron, and they live for centuries. The main character in this story is a woman called the Midnight Merchant who collects these Jinn relics and sells them in kind of the black market. And basically the Midnight Merchant is coerced by the Sultan into hunting down a specific relic for him, or else he'll throw her in prison and have her tortured. So she goes off across the desert with the Sultan's son, the prince, and that's basically the plot and where we're at right now. Like I said, the magic system is super cool. The characters all seem very unique. I'm really having a fun time with this one, and I will update you guys after I finish the book. This is the last one. All right, welcome to the wrap up of the 5 Genie books that I have read. Starting with The Stardust Thief, I have to wrap up my thoughts on that. I just finished it a couple of days ago, and I really was just super engaged the entire time I was reading the story. I thought that the characters were really interesting, and I love how Chelsea Abdullah weaved in the mythology of the 1001 Nights, I think more closely in this book than any of the other Jinn books that I read. There was something exciting happening in almost every chapter once you got past like the first third of the book. I didn't really want to put it down the entire time I was reading it. It ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I am excited for the sequel, The Ashfire King, to come out. I think that comes out in 2024, so I'll be following along for that one really closely. I also wanted to say I just found out there is a new Jinn book that is coming out this month. It's called The Jinn Bot of Shantyport, and it looks like a cool sci-fi genie book, which I didn't get to experience in this collection of stories. So if you are planning to read The Jinn Bot of Shantyport, or you have read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts on them were. As for the final rankings, I think if I was to put these in order of ones I enjoyed most to ones I enjoyed least, the order would be number 1, City of Brass, number 2 would be The Stardust Thief, number 3, A Master of Djinn, number 4, Alif the Unseen, and number 5, The Golem and the Jinni. Those would be my ranked order, but that's not to say that The Golem and the Jinni was a bad book. I still am planning to read the sequel, so that I think really goes to show like my enjoyment of these series. The only reason that one was even last was just because it was a lot slower than the other ones, but I was still very engaged in the characters and want to know what happens to them in the second part of the duology. So do have some catching up to do. I have to finish the Daevabad trilogy now, obviously, because that was my favorite of the 5 that I read. So I can't wait to find out what happens in Daevabad. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I said, let me know in the comments below which one you have added to your TBR because of this video, or which one you've read that you really, really enjoyed. And as always, be kind, read books, and hit the subscribe button below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you next time. Cheers.